know what I'm doing! Poof! Well, look what we have here. If it isn't a return to Warzone for our old pal, Nismospoolin. Yeah, we're back at it again. But today is not going to be a gameplay or anything like that. Today we're talking about a very serious subject. A very serious topic that could make or break your gaming career forever. And that topic is, should you still be using a controller in 2022? I do believe that controllers have their place in society. Whether that place in society is on the short bus or not will be determined later on in this video. But as of right now, we're back, we're playing Warzone, and we're making some content. Oh no. Controllers versus mouse and keyboard. A war waged since the dawn of time. But what is the answer to this query? Which is better? I will answer that for you today, along with many other questions you may have about controllers and mice and keyboards. Controllers are made to be as applicable to as many games as possible, but they're not perfect for every single game. Most of the time, a controller serves as an entry point to whatever game you're playing. For example, if you're playing an FPS game, the natural progression would be to a mouse and keyboard. Racing games would be to a steering wheel and pedals. Fighting games, an arcade stick. Flying games would be flight controls. A controller is supposed to be a simplified entry point for whatever game you're playing. That's why they've been shipped with consoles since the 80s. That doesn't mean there aren't some games that feel pretty good on controller. Dark Souls and Elden Ring, for example, feel pretty good with a controller. In fact, some would argue that it's the best experience to play those games with a controller. It's best to think of controllers like training wheels on a bicycle or bumpers at a bowling alley. You can get really good at riding your bike with the training wheels on it, but eventually, you'll limit yourself from progressing further. Taking the training wheels off is scary, because it's a whole new experience, and you'll probably fall over a few times. But once you figure it out, you can go much further, turn sharper, and travel faster with them off. The same thing applies to controllers and video games. That's not to say that there aren't some extremely successful controller players out there. Nick Merckx is one of them. But there's a reason he still uses aim assist while playing games like Warzone and Apex Legends.
You're better off on this with your aim assist with certain guns, like the assault rifle and the submachine gun and stuff. And there's probably a lot of you guys in here that might think that as well.
The reality is that if you take things like aim assist away from a controller player, there's just no way for them to move and aim like somebody using a mouse and keyboard. If there was a LAN tournament for cross-play players and there was no training wheels like aim assist, controller players wouldn't stand a chance, and the reason aim assist exists in the first place is because consoles are cheaper and more accessible than PCs. Mouse and keyboard takes some time to get used to before you're any good. It financially benefits the company that makes the game to try to level the playing field for the bigger audience of controller users. But at the end of the day, if you stick with a controller, you're never going to be at your best. And if a competitive game comes out without aim assist, you're going to get the doors blown off of you in game one. So it benefits you greatly to graduate to mouse and keyboard when you can, so you can continue to grow. I know a lot of console players don't want to hear these facts, but it's true. The longer you rely on those training wheels, the worse it'll be when you get into a game that doesn't allow you to basically have aim hacks to compensate for the controller's limitations. Learning to use a mouse and keyboard effectively should be any console player's goal. To essentially level up and graduate to the next tier of gameplay and offer up a new challenge for yourself. There are even players like myself that know how to play against controller players using aim assist with mouse and keyboard, because aim assist is laughably predictable. If you can identify a controller player before you engage them, you can beat them every time, because you know where the aim assist will target first. There are tons of flaws with controllers and aim assist that can't be overcome with skill and practice, but with keyboard and mouse, practice and patience will always yield results in the end. If you're still defending controllers at this point, here's what makes controllers fundamentally flawed. Controllers are designed to get the maximum amount of input with the least amount of buttons and player movement. A standard controller has about 16 inputs, not including movement from the analog sticks. And a standard keyboard has 101 keys, not including the mouse, and everything on a controller is within a finger's reach. You don't have to move your arms or wrists to find the button you want to press. Controllers are designed this way for accessibility. The lower the bar to entry, the more people can take part, and the more money console and game companies make. It's a safe entry point to where players can have a fun experience without thinking too much about what they are interfacing with. Another issue is analog sticks for player movement. They're accessible because they always reset to the same position so your thumbs can find out where they are without thinking about it. But the resistance of the stick trying to reset back to the middle cuts down on your precision. With an analog stick, you're always fighting against the resistance of the stick to get to your target. A mouse is never fighting against you, and it doesn't reset to a position when you let go of it. So if you set your crosshairs on something, don't move your player character, and then let go of the mouse, your crosshair will stay right where you left it, instead of resetting to the middle like with a controller. Player movement is faster and more fluid for mouse and keyboard players. You can run forwards, jump, shoot, and slide or crouch at the same time by mapping keys to be accessible by individual fingers at the same time. With a controller, things like strafing, shooting, and jumping at the same time is near impossible without a controller with additional buttons or paddles on the back, and the more inputs that you add to a controller, the heavier it gets. Rumble packs and other forms of feedback also affect the accuracy of your analog sticks, as the sticks are picking up the movement of the controller. Rumble and stuff can be turned off, and you can buy controllers without rumble packs in there to avoid this problem. But your movement is still severely limited by the amount of buttons you can hit at any one time. Controller players showing up at LAN tournaments to compete is like a 15-year-old showing up to a BMX park with training wheels on his bike. Yeah, you can ride around with the big kids, but when it comes to using ramps and doing peg grinds, you're gonna look like a bit of a dickhead taking up valuable ramp space that people who know what they're doing could be using. An aim assist is basically equivalent of BMX park giving your bike the ability to do tail whips without your input, so you always land the trick, and then scoring you the same as somebody without training wheels who put in the effort to learn how to do it themselves. Eventually, everyone needs to learn to shit in the toilet and ditch the diaper. If you don't grow up, you're gonna end up having to explain to your prom date why you can't go past second base without getting your wet wipes out of the nightstand. And like I said before, controller players have a place in society. They have a place in gaming. You know, there's got to be an entry level. There's got to be somewhere where you can get in quick, cheap, and learn what you're doing before you move on to the more complicated things like mice and keyboards. Controllers aren't the be-all, end-all for anything, and they're not the worst thing that you could do. I mean, you can get through and be quite competitive with a controller, but you're not going to become the best you could be with one, is what I'm trying to say. But if you've been on controller for a few years now, you've gotten your teeth cut in your FPS games or whatever game you're playing, it's time to consider an upgrade. It's time to consider changing it up and doing something different. And for FPS players, mouse and keyboard, that's where you want to be. All right? It's time to grow up. Like, comment, subscribe, and watch this next video for more content.